The judge laughed out loud, mocking the teenage boy standing in court, calling him clueless and unprepared. But just moments later, the entire courtroom fell silent, because that boy wasn't just any teenager. He was a genius attorney in disguise, and what he did next left even the judge speechless. It was just another routine morning in courtroom 4B. Lawyers shuffled papers, security guards stood by the doors, and the judge, a stern man in his 60s, looked over the day's schedule with a tired expression. Then the doors opened, and in walked someone who instantly drew everyone's attention. A teenage boy, barely 17, wearing a plain gray suit that looked one size too big. He clutched a small folder under his arm and walked with a calm but unfamiliar confidence. People in the room exchanged confused glances. "Is he lost?" one whispered. Another said, "Maybe he's here for someone else." But no, he walked straight to the defendant's table and sat down. The judge glanced up, puzzled. "Young man," he said into the microphone, "do you know where you're sitting?" The boy stood up respectfully and replied, "Yes, Your Honor, I'm the defendant." There was a pause, then a few quiet chuckles from the audience. The judge raised an eyebrow and asked, "And your attorney?" The boy responded evenly, "I'll be representing myself." That was when the courtroom truly stirred. Murmurs filled the air. Someone laughed. A lawyer near the front smirked and whispered, "This'll be quick." The judge, trying to hide a grin, leaned back in his chair and said, "You do realize this is a real trial, not some school mock court?" The boy nodded. "I do, sir." The judge chuckled. "All right then, Mr. King, was it?" The boy nodded again. "Let's proceed, but don't say I didn't warn you." The trial officially began, and all eyes stayed on the teen who clearly didn't belong. His age, his quiet voice, and his simple appearance made everyone assume it was going to be a disaster. The prosecution looked relaxed, even smug, and the judge, while polite, clearly wasn't taking him seriously. As the first witness was called, Jordan King opened his folder and took a deep breath. Nobody expected what would happen next, but in that moment, as the room laughed quietly behind him, Jordan didn't look nervous. He looked focused. And for those paying close attention, there was something strange in his eyes. Not fear, but purpose. The kind of purpose only someone with a plan would carry. The courtroom didn't know it yet, but it had just stepped into the most unforgettable trial of the year. As the trial moved forward, the mood in the courtroom was still light, almost playful. The judge leaned back in his chair, clearly expecting this to be a short and one-sided case. The prosecution, confident and experienced, barely glanced at Jordan as they presented their opening statement. It was clean, professional, and polished. Then it was Jordan's turn. He stood slowly, adjusted his slightly wrinkled suit, and walked to the center of the courtroom. He didn't raise his voice or try to sound dramatic. Instead, he spoke with calm, careful words. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, "you've heard what they think happened. Now I'll show you what actually happened." Some people smiled, thinking it was cute. Others looked at their watches. But within minutes, those smiles began to fade. Jordan spoke clearly, laying out facts like puzzle pieces. He didn't just talk. He explained. He broke things down so even a child could understand, yet with the detail and logic of a trained professional. Then came the first witness. The prosecutor called a man to the stand who claimed to have seen Jordan at the scene of the incident. Jordan approached slowly for cross-examination. "Sir," he said, "you stated that you saw me from across the street around 8:30 p.m.? The man nodded. "And you're certain it was me?" "Absolutely." Jordan paused, then showed the court a street map. "Isn't it true that from your position a street lamp would have blocked your view?" The witness hesitated. I don't remember." Jordan continued, "You also said it was dark. Can you describe what I was wearing that night?" The man stumbled through his answer. People in the courtroom began to shift in their seats. The judge leaned forward. Something was happening, something no one expected. Jordan's questions were precise. His logic was tight. The witness, once confident, now looked unsure. By the time Jordan returned to his seat, the courtroom had gone quiet. The laughter was gone. The smirks had disappeared. For the first time, everyone began to realize this wasn't some kid pretending to play lawyer. This was someone who knew exactly what he was doing, and suddenly, the courtroom didn't seem so comfortable anymore, especially for the people on the other side. By the second day of the trial, everything had changed. What started as a courtroom joke had turned into something no one could ignore. Jordan King, the teenager once mocked for daring to represent himself, was now the center of every glance, every whisper, and every thought in the room. Even the judge, who had been sarcastic and dismissive just the day before, sat up straighter now, watching Jordan closely as if trying to figure him out. The prosecutors, once smug, now looked nervous. Jordan wasn't just asking smart questions, he was predicting their moves. He caught small errors in their paperwork, corrected misquoted statements, and called out inconsistencies with confidence that rattled everyone. He didn't need to yell or act tough, he simply let the truth speak, and the truth was on his side. Then came the turning point. The prosecution called their key witness, a woman who claimed she saw Jordan at the scene of the crime. She seemed sure of herself, until Jordan stepped up. "Ma'am," he began, "how far were you standing from the alley?" "About 30 feet, she replied. "And what time was it?" Around 9 p.m., she said confidently. Jordan nodded. "Do you wear glasses?" "Yes," she said slowly. "But I wasn't wearing them that night." Jordan paused, then asked calmly, "So, at night, 30 feet away, without your glasses, you're certain it was me?" The witness shifted in her seat. I thought it was..." A wave of silence rolled over the room. Jordan continued, showing security camera footage that placed him miles away at that same time. The judge looked stunned. The jury began to whisper. That's when the judge finally asked what everyone was thinking. "Mr. King, who exactly are you?" Jordan looked up. "I passed the bar exam when I was 17. I'm a licensed attorney. This is my first case." The courtroom gasped. No one could believe it, not because he was young, but because he was brilliant. He wasn't lucky, he was prepared. The judge leaned back, completely silent. No more smirks, no more sarcasm, just awe. Jordan King had gone from being doubted to being the most respected person in the room, and he still wasn't finished. From that moment on, the entire courtroom shifted. No one saw Jordan King as just a teenager anymore. He had earned something few people ever do in a courtroom: real respect. The judge no longer interrupted him. In fact, he often leaned forward, listening carefully to every word Jordan said. The lawyers who once chuckled behind their hands now watched with silent admiration, their pens scribbling notes as if they were students learning from a master. A judge would say, "Your Honor, if you would please remain seated for a minute. Now listen carefully. Your Honor, this is a moment of interplay, not just a presentation. Your Honor, this is..." Jordan, for his part, remained steady. He didn't show off, didn't smile at their surprise. He stayed focused on the case, calmly dismantling the arguments against him, one by one. When he spoke, people listened. When he moved, the room followed. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. His words didn't need to be complicated. They were clear, sharp, and honest. During closing arguments, Jordan stood with the same quiet confidence he'd shown from the beginning. They were clear, sharp, and honest. During closing arguments, Jordan stood with the same quiet confidence he'd shown from the beginning. "You've heard a lot this week," he said, facing the jury, "but what matters is truth. Not titles, not age, not assumptions. There was no dramatic pause, no theatrical gesture, just truth. He showed them evidence they had overlooked, replayed witness contradictions, and reminded them, gently but firmly, that he had never changed his story. The jury watched him with full attention, not as a boy trying his best, but as a lawyer who had already proven himself. When he finished, the courtroom remained still. Even the judge didn't speak right away. And then, after a short deliberation, the jury returned. The foreperson stood and read the verdict. Not guilty. A wave of emotion swept through the room. Relief, shock, even pride. Jordan didn't raise his fists or shout for joy. He simply nodded, quietly thanking the jury with his eyes. The judge, who had mocked him on day one, stood and cleared his throat. Sam said, quote, "The first time the jury rejoiced. The second time the jury laughed when they thought Marsh was guilty. Mr. King," he said, voice softer now, "this court owes you an apology. And a great deal of respect." After the verdict, the courtroom slowly emptied. But the buzz around Jordan King only grew louder. Reporters gathered outside, cameras flashed, and microphones reached out from every direction. People wanted to know everything: who he was, how he did it, why he had taken such a risk. But Jordan wasn't looking for attention. He stepped outside into the daylight, with the same calm he had shown in court, speaking to the press not with pride, but with purpose. "I didn't come here to prove how smart I am," he said. "I came here because I believed the truth would speak louder than my age." That one sentence spread like wildfire. Within hours, his story was on news channels, shared on social media, and talked about in classrooms, offices, and homes. Some praised his bravery, others called him a genius. A few critics said it was reckless, but the truth was clear. Jordan had done what most people thought was impossible: not just defend himself, but win the respect of a legal system built to doubt him. Over the following weeks, job offers started pouring in. Law firms wanted to mentor him. Universities invited him to speak. But Jordan turned most of them down. He wasn't in a rush to be famous or rich. What he wanted, more than anything, was to open doors for others like him, young people who were underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed just because of how they looked or how old they were. He began volunteering at youth legal workshops, teaching others how to speak up, ask questions, and stand up for themselves. Quietly, without show or spotlight, he started a movement. One built not on arrogance, but on empowerment. End of Twitter. One built not on arrogance, but on empowerment. One built not on arrogance, but on empowerment. And though his case had ended, his story was just beginning. Because Jordan King wasn't just a boy who surprised a courtroom, he became a symbol of what can happen when someone refuses to be defined by anyone else's expectations. His courage reminded people everywhere that wisdom isn't limited by age, and justice shouldn't be either. And so, while the courtroom lights dimmed and the headlines moved on, the impact of what he did that week never really faded. It lived on. In the hearts of those he inspired, and in every young voice that dared to speak a little louder because of him. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like the video. Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. Know someone who needs to hear this? Share it with them. For more powerful stories like this, subscribe to our channel. You're watching Truth Crafters, where every story has a message,